administratively is the issue of the budget. Also, how to ensure that the clinical environment for the students continues, and how to make sure in terms of the skills mix, especially in the medicine, in regard to the registrars and so forth, which it was his lab. So I learned a lot because the background about it was about when he will orientate me on the aspects, because I was saying what is the level 1, level 2 medical specialist, what is the, all sorts of forth. And then from my side, it was about how does the budget work, and also how we can also be able to work. I think with a multilateral agreement, with a bilateral agreement, I think probably we're the only ones in the provinces work very closely with our academic institutions to ensure that our clinical environment for the student does work. Lastly, the last time that I met with him, it was the 27th of June, where we had our multilateral agreement, a joint committee, which is I chair, and then the other representatives is the vice chancellors from each universities. And then the Dean of Health Sciences, they form part of that. When we are discussing the issue of the upcoming student placement, the medical interns, the community services, and also the other aspects related to the medical education and resources. So when he came late, he was sitting there that side, and then was sitting that side. And then the issue, it was about how to make sure that we don't lose medical specialists. Because sometimes, because you want to rob Paul and pay Pauline, you ended up now putting more resources maybe only on the general aspect of it in terms of the medical, but not necessarily focusing on the medical specialists. But lastly, actually in June we met twice. The other one was when we were opening the new turning of the Neuroscience Center, Professor Finan, Professor Denstein, the psychiatrist, where we were so excited, turning talk together with the Vice Chancellor and the others. So unfortunately, we won't be able to leave and see that center when it opens. Just like when we did a sword turning for the Forensic Pathology Services unit for the students and also for the whole of the province. Unfortunately, we won't be able to leave and see that. To the family, this is everyone else is going to leave and you'll all be all yourself. I want to say that miss him, but let him go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, MEC Tambombo. At this point, we shall ask the Honorable Minister representing the national government and many other global organizations to come to the fore and offer his tribute to Professor Bongani Mayosi. Dr. Aaron Moswaledi, please come to the fore. Hai hobo bunzulu bolu tadola.
Professor Nantanda Khumalo, Mrs. Selma Mayosi Senior, Nozipho, Svuile, and Kamaku, the Mayosi and the Khumalo families, government ministers, Minister in the Presidency for Monitoring and Evaluation, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Minister of Higher Education, Minister Naledi Pandor, Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Leaders, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, Minister of Science and Technology, Ms. Nkenzani Kubai Nkubani, the Premier of the Western Cape, Premier Helen Zille, Her Worship the Mayor of the city, Ms. Patricia de Lille, my colleague, the Deputy Minister of Health, Dr. Joe Phaahla, the Chairperson of the Council of the University of Cape Town, Mr. Sipho Pitjani, the Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Mamokgethi Phakeng, Deans of our medical schools, leaders of our statutory bodies, the academia and students, the clergy, ladies and gentlemen, I'm standing here in front of you representing the government of the Republic of South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa has at me and he is sending his warm greetings and his heartfelt condolences to the Mayosi and the Khumalo families. Needless to say, he has declared this funeral a special provincial funeral in recognition of the role that Bongani played in the life and the development of the people of our country. It is with a very heavy heart that I bid farewell to Bongani Mayosi into the afterlife that will but bring him eternal peace. Quite often, when you are representing a government in events like this, you tend to keep to the official line because you might not even be knowing the person you are bidding farewell to. You might just be knowing them through their office, and because you are coming through the official office, you talk very much official. I am glad to announce today that that is not the case with me in this instance. Yes, I know I'm representing government in official capacity, but I also know who I'm talking about. Well, by the time the letter of the president arrived, that is asking me to represent government here, Nontanda has already asked me to come and speak. Because I met Bongani exactly 35 years ago, when he was still a 16-year-old lad. Met him at the Natal Medical School, now Nelson Mandela School of Medicine. When he arrived to do first year, I was already in the final year of study. But I was also the president of the SRC. So I was given the job to orientate new students. And I keep on remembering that event. A lot has been said about how Bongani met Nontanda, his wife. Yes, I can attest to that. I bear witness to that. They were together in this group I was orientating. And there was a bus that was taking us from place to place within the university. So I noticed this young man and young women who were always sitting together in the bus. I don't think their sitting together was planned. They just found themselves sitting next to each other. But today, these young men and young women are Professor Bongani Mayosi and Professor Nondanda Khumalo, or Mrs. Mayosi, if you wish to say. They were radiating youthful exuberance. I think this is what was called classically love at first sight. I asked Nondanda when the affair actually started. And she said no. After sitting together in the bus on that day, they never left each other's side. It just continued like that until they are today. Unfortunately, they have to leave each other's side last week. This class I was orientating was an extraordinary class of high performers. It is a class that produced Professor Bongani Mayosi, the Dean of Health Sciences Faculty of University of Cape Town. It also produced Professor Nondanda Khumalo, the Professor of Dermatology in the university, who is his wife. It also produced Professor Nxosa Glover, who is with us here today, who is the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine at Nelson Mandela School of Medicine, the first ever Black African woman to become the Dean in that medical school. I might be wrong. Perhaps Dr. Nkosi Dlamini Zuma, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, Dr. Joe Phaahla, and many others who are here at medical school will correct me. But I can't remember a class that produced two people who became deans at the same time in the medical schools of our country. But that's what Bongani's class produced. So, I may not be very wrong to boast that my orientation was devastatingly on point. I can't remember very well what I told them. After all, it was 35 years ago. But I just remember I was pumping them with a lot of politics. But every time I meet Bongani, he remembers what I told him more than I do. And he reminds me. He said, I told them that at medical school, we don't compete with each other, but we compete fiercely with our books. And Bongani told me that that message stuck to him for the rest of his life, to compete with books. And I think that showed in his life. Unfortunately, my own competition with books never became as fierce as I was preaching to them. And that is why I ended where I am here today. Somewhere else. Since Bongani's untimely passing, much has been written about his achievements. He was a brilliant academic and a researcher par excellence, a passionate teacher, an inspiration to all of his students and colleagues. A very young head of medicine of UCT, an A-rated researcher, elected to the prestigious National Academy of Medicine of the US, a recipient of one of the country's highest honors, the Order of Mapunguye in silver. He achieved all this before he turned 50 years of age. Many of us, even if we were to live to 100 years, we won't be able to achieve that. Many have called him a gentle giant, someone known for his humility. This was illustrated after being elected to the National Academy of Medicine, when he said, and I open quotes, "I'm indebted to my mentors, my students, my collaborators, and above all, my wife and children, who have supported and inspired me over the years," close quotes. While we fully understand and accept what Tata Madiba once said about himself in 1994, and I quote, "Death is something inevitable. When a man has done what he considers to be his duty to his people and his country, he can rest in peace. I believe I've made that effort, and that is therefore why I will sleep for eternity." Close quote. That was 1994. Ladies and gentlemen, we do accept what Tata Madiba said, but Bongani had much more still to offer to his country and his family. Not surprising that in the aftermath of his passing, a debate is raging about the concept of transformation in our institutions of higher learning. There's also been fingerprint pointing in this instance, in that we must avoid controversies and mourn the passing away of Bongani in peace and harmony. But I believe as leaders, we'll be failing society if we avoid some home truths today. We shouldn't, because if we do so, Bongani will have died in vain. I won't be exaggerating today to know that in the same vein that the blood of Solomon Mahlangu watered the tree of freedom, so Bongani's blood will also water the tree of transformation in our institutions of higher learning. I am sure, knowing Bongani, will have given us permission to talk about this freely. I read a lot of stories from various individuals in the past 8 days about the goings on at UCT at the time he became dean. It was painful to read that some called him a coconut and a sellout, while others in the opposite spectrum said he was reckless in his position of leadership for listening to students and for even marching with them. I'm here to tell you today that the Bongani I know was none of those. I'm sure about that. And I just don't read about it, I know about it. He was none of this, and I know so. When I became Minister of Health, I received a review of the Medical Research Council, which was conducted by international researchers. It was less than a stellar performance of our prime research institute in the field of medicine. And I was compelled to do something after receiving that report. Who could I turn to bring this institution back to life? Naturally, I turned to Bongani Mayosi. I approached him and said, "Bro, I think you have to take over as the president of the Medical Research Council, because our prime institution is tangling like a sheep in stormy seas." He looked at me. He said, "Minister, you have two choices. Either I come over and become the president of the Medical Research Council. That's the first choice. Or I stay at UCT and continue to help to produce many, many more black graduates. And he looked at me straight in the eye and said, Minister, please understand that if I leave UCT, many black students won't make it. He said that to me frankly, without blinking. And I want to tell you what Bongani was not saying, because I need to be very careful with that. He was not saying what you think, because his humility will not have allowed him to say so. He was not saying he's the only brilliant one who is able to make black students pass. No. And I did not ask him what he meant, because I immediately connected with him. I knew exactly what he meant, and I knew exactly where it came from. So I did not ask him. Director of the program, please allow me to narrate the story. Why I'm saying so? Unfortunately, I'm completely incapable of telling short stories. So you're going to have to bear with me. I was the first MEC for education in Limpopo after the 1994 watershed elections. Immediately after taking over, a Mr. Matukane, who was at Alan Taylor residence with us, colleagues here will remember him, but he was not doing medicine, he was doing engineering. He went to the US to complete his studies in engineering. And when he came back, we've just concluded the elections, and he settled in a small dorpie called Potgietersrus in Limpopo. That area was the only place in the whole country that voted no in the referendum of Mr. de Klerk, if you remember, in 1992, if my memory serves me well. It's a right-wing enclave. Mr. Matukane took his kids to the nearest school, thinking that we have just voted and we've got a new country. That nearest school was called Laer School Potgietersrus, an Afrikaner-only school. All hell broke loose. He was told in no certain terms that blacks are not going to be allowed in that school. We were challenged as a government, and we intervened, but we were also sent packing. We took that school to court, and we were viciously criticized for taking a mere primary school to court when we said we are in power. We were told that we must instruct them to take the kids, but they were refusing. So we continued to the court with all the criticism. We were called cowards and useless, a useless new government that claimed to have won liberation, but can't put their own kids in any school. But we continued, we went to court, and Judge J.J. Spoelstra ruled in favor of government. The chairperson of that school governing body outside court, he declared that we got a communist judge. And the school appealed, but they lost the case again. We were beating our chest. And I was heading to that school with pomp and ceremony. Our premier then was Advocate Mwagora Mahlodi. And he declared publicly that we cannot continue to live with white dinosaurs in our country. Just when I was marching into that school with lots of black kids, I got a phone call from Madiba. Tata Mandela phoned me, and I was shivering because I didn't know what he was going to tell me. He just got a phone call from Mr. de Klerk, who was complaining that this young man is excited and acting recklessly. He's going to cause bloodshed from the right-wingers and destroy the transition which we have just achieved. And Tata Madiba wanted to know what's happening, what was I going to do? I assured Tata Madiba, I said, I'll do two things, Tata. Please give me a chance, I'll do two things. I'll place the commissioner of police in the school, at least for a whole week. That's number one. I'll also withdraw one of the inspectors in the surrounding schools, in the surrounding circuit, and put him in the school on a full-time basis for at least a period of 6 months. And I executed this plan. Well, you know what the white parents did? They took all their kids and left and opened a school nearby called Folk School. Their teachers wanted to follow and go to the Folk School. Well, I told them that immediately they get out of the gate, we terminate their salaries because Folk School is not a recognized school. So they stayed, but much against their will. They stayed because they have no option. So we had a situation where white learners are gone, white teachers are remaining with black kids, and there's no black teacher. After 3 months, the inspector demanded to see me. And he said, MEC, what's the MEC then? He said, MEC, we have won the legal battle, but we have totally lost the developmental war. There's no progress in that school. All those kids are going to fail. They won't make it. I asked him exactly what he meant. He explained to me what was happening. He says, I sit in one class and observe. When I leave and go to the next class, before I pass the last window, I could hear the teacher insulting these kids, telling them how useless blacks are, telling them that Mandela won't help them, it's not in the classroom, and telling them that they've got no future. He then said he goes back immediately. When he goes back, he can hear the other class, they are being insulted. And he said, I'm moving to and fro. What is the moral of this story? He was telling me that if somebody hates you, they cannot be able to mentor you. They won't make you successful if they hate you, if they don't believe you. And that's why, because of this experience, I understood what Bongani was saying. He was telling me that he loves the students, but more than anything else, he believed in the potential of black students, and he wants to mentor them with passion, love, and without prejudice. So I want to state today, ladies and gentlemen, that if I'm black and you look down at me, you have no confidence in me, and you believe that I can never be your equal, even in a century, or you outright hate me, you won't be able to mentor me. You won't make me successful. And so Bongani mentored so many people out of love, passion, and the deep belief in their potential and capabilities. So those who were attacking Bongani and criticizing him for believing in the capabilities of black students, and even for marching alongside them when they were making demands. Please go home today and look in the mirror. You'll see a dinosaur, which you'll see a dinosaur which will go extinct in our institutions of higher learning, because Bongani's death cannot be in vain. He was not only a researcher, he believed in building the human capital of the country. And let you tell you my next story. This one might be shorter. The story of human capital in our country. Bongani Mayosi was the chairperson of the National Health Research Committee, the committee that sifts through all the proposals of research. When I met him in that capacity one day, I complained to him and the committee. I was just back from Brazil, and they took me to one institution, a research institution, and told us that there are 10,000 PhDs under one roof in that institution doing research. I said, wow, yes, program director. I said, 10,000, yeah? We. So I said, Bongani, when are we going to, 10,000? He said, yeah, Minister, we can try. We can start with 1,000 PhDs. That's why this idea of 1,000 PhDs have been reverberating here. Then the next moment, I met 16 CEOs of private companies, private hospitals, pharmaceuticals, and medical schemes. Every time I meet them, we fight about NHI. So in 2011, I said, guys, we're going to stop fighting. This NHI you are fighting again is going to happen anyway. None of you is going to stop it. It's going to happen. So let's stop fighting. And I said, let me tell you what. Me and you, we share something in common. We need a human capital of South Africa. Whether you are in public or private, you need a human capital. I said, let's sit down and work on the human capital. After all, we have got money. And so, I told him about this idea from Bongani that we can produce 1,000 PhDs. And that process started. And I think in tribute to Bongani today, I need to give you progress, because many of you might not know about it. Bongani was going to head the selection committee. Who is likely to be successful in doing that PhD? In the beginning, it was in the field of HIV/AIDS research and TB, but we soon expanded to NCDs, and I've just called the committee that they must also do it for regulatory medicine. But let me give you, and I'm about to finish, Program Director. Let me give you the progress. 60 cohorts of these PhD students went through this program. 26 of them have already completed. And while I was still relaxing one day, I received an SMS from one of them who told me, Minister, you may not remember me. I'm a product of that PhD students. I'm now the dean of the School of Dentistry at Wits Medical School. So 26 have completed. 34 are completing this year. And 15 will enroll next year. And in this women's month, I'm happy to inform you. Yes, it's woman, yes. Women's mouth, yes. I was talking to the president, yes. I'm happy to announce to you that 80% of them are women. of this AD because we agreed so with Bongani, and 62% of them are African. This fund is administered by Dr. Ayanda Nsaluba, the former DG of the Department of Health. We call it the Public Health Enhancement Fund, but he's also working with Stavros Nikolai from Aspen Pharmaceuticals. Ayanda has just informed me when I sneaked out to the bathroom, I met him there. He said they've just put 10 million rand aside to send more next year. We did not only do this part which was done by Bongani. We said, what about junior medical students? And we agreed that this fund will go to fund medical students from the poorest, far forgotten rural areas of this country. And I'm happy to announce to you that 70 of them are about to complete their final year this year, starting from this very same fund. Lastly, very lastly, I've got a letter here from the Minister of Health in Angola. I met him at the World Health Assembly. Remember, Bongani is also serving in the World Health Organization. There's a special committee there that has been put aside, which Bongani is serving in. But in May, at the World Health Assembly, I met the Minister of Health from Angola. And he was saying, please, I'm coming to South Africa. Make me meet Bongani, because I want him to change Angola. And so after he passed on, she phoned me and said, Minister, I'm sending a message, please read it at the funeral, because I may not be able to attend. So I'm not going to read this letter. I'm just reading one paragraph. For some time now, we've been collaborating with Professor Bongani Mayosi, as he was assisting us and advising us to establish cardiology and cardiothoracic surgery services in our referral hospital in Angola, as well as the first step towards setting up a National Association of Cardiology in Angola. He had the opportunity to visit us in Luanda and take part in some conferences, seminars, and other capacity building activities. When we had agreed and looked forward, moving further in bringing cardiology services to the broader reach of our people, then we got this sad news, curtailing our dreams and our projects. On behalf of the Ministry of Health of Angola, and indeed my own, we wish to convey our heartfelt condolences to the bereaved family, the University of Cape Town Health Sciences, the government of South Africa, to all the friends, relatives, and colleagues, while you are joining in prayers to Almighty God for eternal rest of his soul. R.I.P. Minister of Health, Luanda, Dr. Sylvia Lutukuta. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, Nondlandla, my sister, and the three girls, please be strong for Bongani. And to you, Bongani, your race has been successfully run. Good evening to you, my brother, until we meet again.